The weekend is almost here, as this now a Thursday edition of Mic'd Up on Pittsburgh Sports Live, Pittsburgh Sports Now, and all throughout the Now family of networks. I'm your host, Mike Asti, and I am joined as always by Mike Vukovcan. Mic'd Up is presented by Martin Lawn Services, and you can contact Doug Martin for all your lawn care needs at 412-849-5894. This show is going to be college football talk. We're not too far away from the college football season, even though we're not yet into summer. This is getting geared up for another college football season, a different one. As we're already hearing, we've already touched on it before, a 12-team college football playoff, different coaches' thoughts on that, the state of a couple programs here locally and regionally, and how important this college football season could be really to the future of a lot of these schools. We are going to talk in particular Pitt and West Virginia. Pat Narduzzi, some recent comments that also connect to the 12-team playoff, and how Neil Brown is doing down there in Morgantown, because it's a very, very pivotal year for the Mountaineers. They get in a bowl game again. They have that game against Army, get a big-time W, and then now how the future looks for West Virginia, because obviously Mountaineer fans are going to now want to take another step up. And of course, Pitt fans are going to want to take another step up. They kind of been wanting to step with Narduzzi for a while, so maybe a little bit more pressure under him, but he certainly has been vocal recently as well, to say the least. And to start things off, of course, here on Pittsburgh Sports Now, with the state of Pitt and with some comments Pat Narduzzi made recently, and that connects to the expansion of the 12-team playoff, where he's saying that while this does allow more teams to have a quote-unquote chance at a national championship, it doesn't really feel like he feels this is that much more of a chance, even going as far to say that the teams that are not a part of the 12-teamer and those players are going to not want to play in those bowl games. It'll diminish those bowl games even further. You'll see more players exiting out of bowl games, even if they're healthy or even if maybe they don't want to be a part of the draft. They just won't play, and talking about a financial incentive to get players to play in those games. And even bringing up the topic that has yet to be decided, that everyone is wondering, that is the reason why this is only proposed and not yet officialized, is Notre Dame. Right now, as we speak, you have to win a conference to get a bye, which means that if you don't win a conference, you automatically cannot be anything better than a 5 seed. Notre Dame, an elite program. They've been in the playoff before. Obviously brings cachet. They are not in a conference. They don't seem to want to be in a conference outside of a pandemic. Will that get amended for them, and how will that work? Pat Narduzzi doesn't seem to care too much about what happens to Notre Dame, and made some comments about them recently. Mike, you heard the interview on 93.7 The Fan. You've certainly been around Narduzzi and are familiar with Narduzzi for a very, very long time. What do you feel about his comments in particular, before we get to the state of the program, on the 12-team playoff? I think we both wanted an expansion, but he does bring up kind of the negative end that no one's bringing up about the bowl games outside of those 12, because now the elite bowl games that weren't a part of the national title were at least a chance to win a trophy, to get a ring. You could win that game and that be it. Before, now all it does is advance you around, and if you lose, you get nothing out of it. So is there a negative side where players are not going to care about playing in the Meineke Car Care Bowl and are maybe needing money? Does that make sense to maybe pay them to get in that game?
Yes, I think I was thinking of this the other day when we were talking about that. Last year, we started to see it a lot more, right, with major players opting out, and it's only gonna get worse from here.
It's been worse every year, and it will get
once the trend starts, it's going to happen. And I think Narduzzi is bringing this up because because I think he obviously cares about college football, but
it's going to affect him and even West Virginia. These are programs that if they get in the playoff, it's once probably every 6 or 7 years, but most likely they're in these bowl games.
Exactly. His program, the West Virginias, they're the programs that are going to be affected by players opting out. The only problem is, I don't know. I'm sure this committee is thinking about this. I think the future of bowl games in general, bowl games are in serious doubt.
Yeah,
and I do, because I just don't know who wants to go play in them. And my theory for
if you have sponsors there, though, they'll do them.
Yeah, but when you don't have teams that are fully represented,
It'll
I don't
suck.
know. I think it's a great topic that he brings up. I've always thought that why not tie in the early round of the playoffs with certain bowl games. You know what I mean?
Well, they kind of did that before with you get into this like Orange Bowl, and then if you win, you go on.
But the first round of the playoffs, let's say it's Coastal Carolina versus whoever, Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Make that be the Gator Bowl. And the second round, and then the other first round game between, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I hear you. It would still involve those games. I mean, I think that would make sense. You still would have a lot of bowl games that would be in doubt still, though, even if you did that.
I don't know what the answer is because I don't see the incentive. These paying is fine, but then on the other hand, what about the kids that you don't think the kids that make these 12
right.
are going to say, hey, what are you talking about? We're the ones playing in the marquee games that are bringing these programs money and bringing the networks money. We don't deserve money either.
And I think it also would create a scenario that if you're Coastal Carolina, and of course you want to be in the playoff now and you want a chance at a national title, but would some of those kids like to be the 12th seed who goes ahead and loses right away for no money, or go ahead and be the 13th ranked team and go get some cash?
Exactly.
I mean, honestly, let's be real. Like neither one of them are national champion and one of them is getting paid. So if you're going to pay the non-championship bowl games, those non-legit bowl games, you got to pay them all. And then of course, this isn't socialism. So if you pay the 30th ranked team one money, you're going to have to pay the team that's ranked 15th more to provide an incentive to be a better team. And then it's going to be really about the opinion of the rankings, because if the team gets ranked 15th and they feel like they should have been 14th and they lose money out of it, they're going to get really mad. I don't know how you do that fairly, but that maybe you got to do something.
And then the other issue that is sure to come up is college basketball. Those guys.
Yeah, then you got to pay them. Right.
It's a pro.
And then you got to pay every college athlete, because then obviously women's sports and things like that, they're going to say, I got to get paid too. You're going to have those legal issues, Title IX. I feel like the slippery slope is, and I don't think this will happen because of this. If you pay anyone for any game at all, direct payment, not under the table like illegal teams do in college football or college basketball or any sport, you're going to have to pay everyone across the board, or somebody's going to have a crusade on why I didn't get paid, and they wouldn't be wrong necessarily.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen because there's just too many people that'll have to be paid.
In the regular season, you'd have to do it as well. Yeah.
The only thing you're going to have to try to come up with here is I just think the legitimacy of college bowl games is in serious doubt here if when these college playoffs get here. I just don't I don't know. I just have serious doubt as to how much these kids are going to want once they see the trend, what happened last year or the last 2 years. It's just going to get worse from here, and I don't know that how to stop it. And I honestly don't believe college coaches are going to put that much pressure on their kids to play in those games, because deep down they know that it's really not worth it for them.
No, it honestly, and I've always had this opinion. This happened with Will Grier. He was with WVU for 2 years, a quarterback that they thought was going to the NFL. Immediately, Dana Holgorsen called him a pro play in the college game. Obviously, that wasn't the best of years for West Virginia as a team. They had some big wins, though. He didn't play in any bowl game for the Mountaineers. And I don't know how you can really be mad at a kid if it's not a legit bowl game and their sights are on the next level and they have a chance at that money. Because what do they get out of playing that one minor bowl game? The school may want it, but I don't think the programs are going to pressure them. I don't get mad at those players. I don't think you can do the payment, because that's just a slippery slope that would just go crazy. Yeah. maybe what you could do, I wouldn't have a problem just in general for that conversation on paying college athletes for their likeness. Like that was what the Fab Five argued many decades ago, that if you buy a jersey that is number 1 with Pitt back in the day, everybody knows that's Larry Fitzgerald's jersey back in the early 2000s. So giving him a percentage of the sales from Nike because that's clearly his jersey. But that doesn't mean you got to pay him directly $400 a week just for showing up. I think that would get a slippery slope. I don't know how you do that fairly. I don't know how you'd pay more to certain to not, depending on the games. But maybe they shouldn't have expanded to the Tampa Bowl and to the Cheez-It Bowl and to all these bowls. There are too many bowls. And I get if you watch, why would they not do it? And people do watch. I think that's the reason why they might stay around. In the dog days of December 19th, people are off work, their family's coming in, they're not yet at Christmas, not much to do if it snows a lot. There's bowl games on.
Yeah, I get it, but I just don't know. The other, I think the overlying comment that Narduzzi made yesterday with Pony and Mother was that, and I think it's totally true, is he says, I just don't like the direction that college football is headed. There's a lot of things happening, and I don't know that they have the smart enough leadership with Mark Emmert and those people that to figure out to have a foresight in what's happening and to look ahead.
Right.
Because I think that's one of the reasons also why they were hesitating on expanding the college football playoffs. It's a good thing, but it also leads to a lot of things that I don't know that they know how to address yet. And we'll see.
I think they definitely can't. I do think, as much as I like that there's an expansion, I think everybody does in some ways, even though I did say I would have probably preferred to start at 8 because of what you're alluding to. You expand a little bit, you see what's going on, and either you stay or then you go to 12. I don't think they can go any more than 12. No. I don't want to have a 32 team expansion. I know that would obviously help Pitt and West Virginia, but at some point you got to stop. At some point it would ruin the entire bowl system. You would have no reason for any of these bowls. If you want to keep a few bowls, you got to stop at 12. And I think also the problem that Narduzzi's alluding to, and it's still going to be the case, Mark Emmert and the NCAA, and it's been going on for years, they don't really have the authority over certain programs. They do over some, but Alabama, Ohio State, Texas, when they're good, USC, when they're good, and not necessarily right now, but when they're good, those programs, Oklahoma, when they're good, they can do what they want. They're going to squeeze them in.
They flip Mark the middle finger.
Right, basically, they can do whatever they want. They can say whatever they want. Nick Saban, Clemson, Dabo Swinney, they're on the car wash, just basically tearing up the NCAA every day before any announcements. They have no repercussions. If they lose a game, they're still going to get squeezed in. Their schedule's hard enough and they win enough that you can't really argue with them because the resume is there. They're Teflon. For a word. And Notre Dame's another one, even though they're not in the conference. Before we get to West Virginia and the state of the Mountaineers, Narduzzi brought that up and we touched on it the other day, but do you feel like there's going to be an adjustment? Because it's almost like they forgot about Notre Dame when they put out this proposal nationally, which is crazy. But they cannot do a system where Notre Dame is forced to be in a conference. They can't force them in unless that's what they wanted. And they can't only have them be a 5-seeded best. That just sounds like it's never going to be the way this goes. No. What can they do?
They'll adjust it to where I think they'll base it off of whatever I think they'll eventually go possibly to whatever the college football playoff rankings are. And that'd be
the fairest.
Yeah, I think that's what because then nobody will have an argument. Honestly, that's what I would do. My system would be the top 4 teams would be the 4 teams that are ranked 4.
Yeah.
And then
otherwise, why are you ranking them?
yeah, exactly. That's why you're ranking them. So the other conference champions would be somewhere you'd have an automatic place within the top 12.
You get in, but don't have to be a top 4. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
They'll do that because Notre Dame is Notre Dame, and 2 or 3 other teams are the lifeblood of college football, and they're not going to screw with Notre Dame. So
no, and there it is. I think we figured it out. Why why are you ranking them if it's just the top 4 conference winners? So you're telling me, and maybe this actually, Mike, would benefit Pitt and West Virginia if they can somehow squeak a conference title as ranked 7th. According to the current proposal, they would be seeded 4th, and Notre Dame would be 7th, even if the Irish are undefeated. That's wild. There's no way that can go down. Right now, I think we both admit that wouldn't be fair.
No.
So, I mean, that would just, I mean, why are you ranking them all season? I don't think these teams or even these coaches look at these rankings and put it on the wall and say, oh man, we were ranked 2nd in the 3rd week of the season. Yeah, we're going to put a trophy up. No, it's to get somewhere. Hey, why are you ranking them if you're not going to use the ranking to do anything?
Do that, and then whoever the champions are, the Big 12, if they're one of the top 4 ranked teams, right, then they're obviously up there. If not, if
they're in, just not up there,
yeah, whoever is and then they decide who the 5 through 12 is. But I think this is obviously not going to. I would highly doubt that this is going to happen this year. There's too much to be worked out.
You would hope, but who knows?
Yeah, you throw it out there. You have a year to work on this, and then go from there next year.
Yeah. Mic'd up here, Mike Vukovcan, Mike Asti here, of course, presented by Martin Lawn Services. We are going to recap things now and close up the show with West Virginia. WVU Sports Now, of course, bringing you tons of coverage about what Neil Brown's doing. We talked a lot Pitt recruiting, but the Mountaineers also doing a lot of work. Neil Brown throwing up those let's go tweets every single day, it seems. He's bringing in some solid recruits. An important year for West Virginia after that bowl appearance, of course, against Army, which took the program to a step above where they were the year before. The cupboard kind of bare for Brown when he took over for Dana Holgerson, and a pivotal year for West Virginia, who similarly would get impacted by this college football playoff expansion, that if somehow they were even second in a conference, or that year where they were close to Oklahoma or any of those, that they could squeeze in. But I will say right now, it certainly appears, even for me, Mike, that Neil Brown is actually, we've known he's been a great coach. And this, I think, is the opposite of Narduzzi. Narduzzi's always been a solid recruiter. Some have wondered about him as a coach in terms of X's and O's on the field during the season. There was that gaffe, that mistake against Penn State, etc. And he's always been able to recruit talent in, but maybe underachieving with those regular seasons. Neil Brown's been a great coach. He's young. He's been a great coach at Troy, the Mountaineers. I don't know if anybody realized his recruiting ability until this year. And this year's been a step above recruiting than even last year, because if you recall, and I did a couple of shows with Brad Howe, a colleague of mine at Metro News that have been on this channel, that last year wasn't about Neil Brown recruiting because he was dealing with a legitimate racism scandal and just a mess with Vic Koenig having to be let go from the program. This year, he's showing he can recruit, and that's what college football is about. So I thought they were a year away from really vying for a chance at the conference title, and maybe they're still there. They need to do a lot defensively, and Jared Dagey is going to have another year to really become better, as he did kind of improve last year, but some still are critics of him. But I think Neil Brown's doing work right now. I don't think Mountaineer fans can be too upset about the recruiting offseason so far for Neil Brown to West Virginia.
Yeah, I think from when I am gathering, he's in line to get a few more 4-star recruits. Kids have given them silent commitments, and I think they're going to be coming up. I read that West Virginia hasn't had a top 25 recruiting class since 2009, and that
wouldn't be shocking. Yeah,
that could change this year. I believe he's in. If my information is correct, he's in the next week or so, he's going to be getting a handful of 4-star recruits, and I think that's good. And I think that's where Pitt is really. I'm pretty honest with where I think things are with Pitt, and I don't go out and I'm not a cheerleader. I'm not
right.
That's not who I am. I do believe, though, that Pitt's administration's patience with Pat Narduzzi is finally going to pay off. I think you're right. People forget that when he took over coaching, this was his first time being a head coach. It's not, whereas Neil Brown,
he was a head coach before.
He was a head coach. Pat Narduzzi, he was learning on a job at a Power 5 school.
Yeah.
So was he perfect? Hell no. He maybe made some bad hirings, his personality, whatever. He's learning.
Right.
One thing he did do was, and what's going to make him, I believe, I think Pitt's on the verge of being in the upper half of the ACC for a while. Their recruiting is tremendous. Um, he has it where he wants to be, where you have your seniors playing big roles, but you're also getting contributions from talented freshmen. And he has it rolling. People are thinking, well, they graduated 6 guys to the NFL last year on defense. Their defense is going to suffer. That's not going to be the case this year. He has kids that were behind them that are good enough to play. I just think that and the key to that with Pat has been you're only as good as your staff around you. And he has a tremendous, his best assistant coaches since he's been here. Archie Collins, Brennan Marion, Charlie Partridge, those guys, Corey Sanders, tremendous coaches, tremendous recruiters, and they're seeing the results of it. The kid, they got a big kid yesterday from Georgia, had offers from Notre Dame, Penn State, West Virginia, other Power 5 programs. He just has it rolling right now. He needs to stay out of the way,
Right.
keep the recruiting going.
Yeah.
And they caught a big break this year by having Kenny Pickett back. And
I was going to say, because this also connects to what I think both programs are going to need to rely on right now. Both programs have a quarterback that's experienced, that is on his last go in college football. And really, as much as we can talk about recruiting, and of course the future of these programs are important for these fan bases and the programs, this next season could be hinged, and it will be, on Kenny Pickett and Jared Dagey. And Jared Dagey, to my surprise, was ranked as one of the top 25 quarterbacks in college football by the Sporting News. This is a guy who was criticized heavily at the beginning of last season. He had that issue in that Texas Tech game that kind of unraveled at that point in the year. But he has a 63% completion percentage, 7,000 plus passing yards. He has been good for West Virginia. He is not Will Grier. He is not going to be an NFL quarterback for me. I think you have to also understand what these guys are. Jared Dagey in particular, he can be good. I think he can be good enough for that team. Certainly, if he can not have to throw that many passes per game, when they can be that run first team that they were when they were at their best last year. I think Jared Dagey is good. I think he's good enough. I think he doesn't make as many mistakes as some quarterbacks of the past for the Mountaineers. But this season really does hinge on his shoulders. He is a redshirt senior, so he really is the guy with that experience. And Kenny Pickett in particular is a player that he's really become a leader of this team. And without him, imagine where they would have been the last couple of years. I mean, I think Pitt fans also are too hard on Kenny Pickett for sure.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's a good thing that Kenny's coming back. It gives them hope now to really succeed, because you're not breaking in that first year quarterback. The key for Pitt then will be next year will be who their next quarterback is. It's a quarterback, no matter if it's the NFL or college football, it's about your quarterback. You need to have quarterbacks in the system, and that'll be the test for Pitt next year. But this year, I think they have everything in place to have a really successful season.
Yeah, and also, obviously, you're going to have Clemson and Oklahoma that are always going to be up there, but having a veteran quarterback so important, because, for example, again, with Jared Dagey, he's one of the few returning veteran quarterbacks. So most of those Big 12 teams are not bringing back their quarterback, and he is coming back. That continuity, that experience is certainly big. And Kenny Pickett not being there would have made this year totally different. No matter what Narduzzi's doing recruiting-wise, this would not have been able to be a good season. He coming back. So hopefully he's healthy enough. And also hopefully he's not asked to do too much, because sometimes there were games last year where he was asked to do kind of LeBron James of the squad and do it passing and running. You don't want to kill him before he gets a chance.
Similar situation, Mike, to I equated it a lot to what was going on with the Steelers with no running game.
Right.
They had no running game. Ben Roethlisberger had no running game. Therefore, you're asking your quarterback to throw the ball 45, 50 times a game.
Right.
That's just a recipe. I don't care how good you are. You're throwing the ball 50 times a game. You're gonna sprinkle in mistakes there somewhere, and he can't do that. Pitt, hopefully their running game gets on track this year, and if it does, that's going to make Kenny Pickett a better quarterback.
Yeah, and these aren't Heisman winners, but they certainly are good enough quarterbacks for these programs to give these programs some success this next season, but potentially the future bright beyond that. We will see if Pat Narduzzi has the rope to be able to fully seize the opportunity for years to come. And we'll see what happens next year with the administration, because I think they finally are getting the fruits of the labor of recruiting. But of course, he has pressure on him to at least get the win-loss record to show that, because after that appearance in winning a division a few years ago, it now shows that since then has not been what some Pitt fans want. But these are important years for both these programs, and an important year for college football overall as they lead into maybe a 12-team college football expansion. And we'll see what happens with the rest of the bowl games, and that conversation is going to only continue on. That'll do it for this edition of the show. Make sure to hit up Pittsburgh Sports Now as well as WV Sports Now for all the recruiting news about Pitt and the state of West Virginia as well. And of course, all our other sites throughout the Now family of networks. For Mike Vukovcan, for all of us at Pittsburgh Sports Live, PSN, etc., I'm Mike Asti, and that'll do it for this edition of the show. Enjoy your Thursday.